Dexton and Wilt Chamberlain are two athletes from very different eras who do very different things, but they do have one underlying thing in common. And I'm actually a huge fan of both of them. The thing is, the players I really like are the ones who are the most athletic, especially in a sport like basketball, and that's kind of where their issue comes from. If you haven't guessed by now, the parallel that I'm going to draw is that they are both Hall of Fame cappers. Both of them really like to embellish their achievements, and it's kind of to troll people though, more so than to actually claim that what they're doing is real. And the reason I believe Dexton and Wilt should be in the same category is because they're both super athletic, and a certain percentage of people are gullible enough to believe a lot of the claims that they make. When Dexton makes videos where he's talking about touching the top of the backboard or breaking the world record for 40-yard dash or standing long jump, he's intentionally making these videos so that there's an obvious flaw in them that anyone could point out and go, oh, that's not actually real, you clearly faked it. For example, in this video, it's supposed to be super obvious that he used a ladder or lowered the rim or whatever he did to make the angle look like that. But enough people are going to comment on the video and say, oh bro, this is definitely fake and blah blah blah. And that's going to drive engagement. When you get comments, your videos do a lot better, and these trolls then end up feeding into his success. So it makes a ton of sense why Dexton does it. I mean, he's really athletic, a certain percentage of people are going to believe him, and a certain percentage of people aren't, and they're going to comment about it. So that's a really good business strategy. But that starts to get really confusing when you think about someone like Wilt Chamberlain, who was way before the social media era, so why was he even lying about his achievements? And that answer isn't really clear, and that's what's so confusing about the whole Wilt Chamberlain thing. And what I'm referring to when I say the Wilt Chamberlain thing is just the embellishment of his track statistics, his vertical, his bench, his speed, etc. He has the most records of any basketball player ever, so it's not unfathomable to think that he would have the most insane physical statistics. But it is actually pretty unfathomable. No guy that is his height is going to be jumping like that. And like Billy from Dunkademics recently stated in a video, his vertical was probably in the mid-30s, which is still ridiculously high for a center of his size. But for Wilt, it was never enough, and one thing that we can provably say is false are his track statistics. Wikipedia, as well as many articles written about Wilt, have claimed that he had insane track stats like his triple jump, his high jump, his shot put, his 440 yard, which is just a 400 meter now. But it seemed like what he did was take note of what really good track stats were from being around track and then put that down when people asked him what his track statistics were. And someone actually went through the PA track archives and they found that Wilt Chamberlain did not do any of the track things that he said he did. Someone also had an old Kansas relay program and they found that Wilt Chamberlain's actual statistics fell well short of what he claimed he had in terms of distances and times. So of all the evidence that we actually have of recorded statistics, Wilt Chamberlain does lie and exaggerate. So it would be kind of silly to assume that the ones like vertical jump or 40-yard dash he would suddenly be telling the truth about. But on the last TikTok I made about Wilt Chamberlain, I got a bunch of comments telling me he was a D1 high jumper, you didn't do your research. But keep in mind, I was also a former D1 jumper, so you now all have to believe all of my vertical jump claims. Obviously, I'm kidding about the last part, but it does bring up an important point that we do tend to believe people who are really good at something and not question it just because they simply are good at something, as if they're immune to lying. But regardless, healthy skepticism is still very important. A really good example of this is when I was at work and I was talking about how I do basketball stuff and someone told me they hit 10 full court shots in a row. It doesn't take long for you to realize that they were lying because anyone who's tried to hit a full court shot realizes the statistical odds of doing that 10 times in a row are so slim that obviously he did not actually do that. Now let's apply the skepticism to something like vertical jump. I realize I'm speaking mostly to people who aren't in the niche of people who watch vertical jump videos every single day, but me as a person who dunks and who jumps, I love doing that. I do it every day. I watch it every day. So I'm not asking you to trust me because I can jump high. I'm asking you to trust me because I have context because I watch these things every single day. So when I see videos of guys who are 5'10" getting their chin to the rim, people like Dak, I'm like, wow, even if he's manipulating the angle, that's still a 50-inch vertical. But when I see Wilt Chamberlain and he's not even able to do that, the math certainly ain't mathing. But an interesting question to ask is how all of this came about in the first place anyway. And the real answer is journalists are just looking for a story and it's not always in their niche. I have seen stories where people talk about a box jump as if it's a vertical jump and they mix up really basic terms that are not hard to understand and are very easy to keep track of, but they still do it because they're not in the niche. But I also certainly don't expect journalists to have the context to say, whoa, that 40-yard dash time, that's way too fast. That vertical jump, no, that's way too high to be realistic. Of course, they're not going to have the context for those sorts of things. One example I want to leave you with of how out of control journalism will get when one person tells a story and others corroborate it is the fact that Wilt Chamberlain used to dunk his free throws. This is accepted as a fact at this point, and it's believed to be the reason that you have to release the ball behind the free throw line. But when I actually found evidence of people talking about it, many of them claimed that he either did it from a standing start or after taking 2 steps. Now, let me put this into context. If you were to do that from a standing start, you would need to break the broad jump world record by several feet in order to still be high enough to dunk the ball. And the broad jump world record would need to be broken by like an unfathomable amount, by like 6 feet or something like that, for him to still be high enough, even at his height, to dunk it on 10 feet. As for the claims that he just took 2 steps, realize that people who jump off 1 foot are known as speed jumpers. You need to have a significant amount of momentum in order to jump and actually go far. And people who jump off 1 foot are really good at this typically. They have really good speed through takeoff, and that's what makes them very good at it. But if you're only going to have 2 steps, you could have the highest vertical in the world, but you're not going to go anywhere. Nobody can build enough momentum or speed in those 2 steps to actually be able to propel themselves 15 feet far. There's a reason all world-class long jumpers take roughly the same distance when they do their run-up. There's a reason Jordan and Dr. J and Zach LaVine and all them all went from really far away when they did free throw line dunks. But you're still going to have articles on the internet that are claiming that Wilt Chamberlain was able to do something that no human will ever be able to do.